Well, welcome, Paige. It's
Thanks for having
super great to get to talk to you today
me. Yeah.
on this special holiday. I'm grateful to see that you are celebrating as we are here. Um, for those of you that don't know Paige Wright is a Portland-based figurative artist here. I've known Paige, gosh, I don't know, more than probably a decade now. It's crazy to think
Wow.
how far back we go, and we've worked with her on and off over the years at Utectic. Um, but what we're particularly excited about is your online feature show, which is the newer format that we've been exploring during these pandemic times. And beyond that online feature, I just wanted to call it. I was really excited that you put forward some two-dimensional work as well, and kind of showcasing both, the obvious, both your clay talents and how you're exploring your ideas and painting as well. So
Yeah.
I was really stoked to get to put those up on the site.
Yeah.
But for those of you that don't know Paige in this format, I mean, really, we've just been trying to get to know you better in this setting. So one of my first and foremost question / I guess plural is, is what got you into clay? Like, so what inspired you, how you began this journey? And then if you would just continue on and kind of just, tell us to how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah. Um, I, I'm from Portland, and there was this magical happening, um, or person named Margarita Leone and her husband at the time, Mark Bernowski, and they had an after-school art program in Northwest Portland, um, in the 90s, maybe even in the late 80s. I'm not exactly sure when they started. Anyway, my mom noticed that I was doing weirdly in school. I wasn't bad, but I wasn't great. And so she was like, okay, you're kind of artistic. We'll put you in this after school art program. And it was going to her studio, and it was basically just this like playground of creative thought. And she just slapped a bag of clay in front of me, and she's like, okay, you can build whatever you want as long as it's a self-portrait, and you have to use this whole bag of clay. And I was just like, wait, what? I get the whole bag? So I just like exploded. I used like 4 bags of clay. I made this like horse Pegasus thing. I may have a picture of it somewhere. But from then I was hooked. I mean, I think even that thing had like pink polka dots on it. And it was just like, I
Cool.
I was just told to think creatively, like what was the weirdest thing I could come up with. And so I was allowed to just kind of like have that outside of school art experience where it was my own thing that enveloped kind of my home creative life, where my mom's like, well, do you want like a table in the garage to like do ceramic stuff? Cindy Irby and Frank Irby, Cindy taught at Lincoln, and Frank taught at PNCA. They were then my next kind of realm of what art and academia was, because I went to Lincoln, and she was like, here's what ceramics is, because you're still like, I don't know how to describe it. Like I was still dabbling in, it was just like creativity. It wasn't just ceramics. So she's like, hey, here's who Richard Notkin is. Here's Roxanne Swensel. So she was just like the academic inkling. And then she was like, hey, did you know you could go to college for ceramics? Because I was like, I'm not going to college. I can't even get like B's. Like, why would I ever want to do that? She's like, well, there's this really cool program at the University of Montana. There's this woman named Beth Lowe. You should definitely apply. It was the only school I applied to. Just knowing that that's what I wanted to do. It's like nothing ever deterred this weird freedom that I had with clay. Like it was my own thing just because it wasn't attached to school at first. And so then I got to kind of apply what I learned in clay to academics. So in college, I really actually flourished because I was like, well, I know how to like organize ideas. So writing an essay in high school was really hard, but then like formulating how I could organize my thoughts mirrored from the like creative side, I could do it in more like learning or learned how I learned kind of thing. Then that kind of piled on for like more pots, and I learned about the bray. We had Archie Bray Day, like God, we had so many people come, and I just got this like exposure of what I could be as an artist. And then I don't know, it just like I never questioned whether or not I wanted to do clay. It was just like, that was it. It was just there. And so it's like I've been doing the same thing where I've been making self-portraits since I was 9, but it's, more evolved and more thoughtful and kind of more directed. And I know now what I want to talk about too. Like that was a hard part. Like that was grad school for sure. I didn't know. I just like showed up and I was like, I don't know. And Brad Schwieger was just like, well, you probably need to figure out how to talk about it. So there's that evolution of it.
Well, I think of a pivotal piece from grad school is your full figure self-portrait that I've like seen over the years kind of come back up in some dialogues. Do you want to talk about, I guess, maybe how you kind of refine that voice in grad school or post-grad school? Or like how you feel about...
I mean, Blair Clemo, who I went to undergrad with, we were teaching at Grand Valley State together after graduate school, and he's like, the dust has to kind of settle before you kind of really know what you're doing or what a direction is. And because I felt like, because you have all this like formula around you for like, okay, you have to do this, critique for graduate school, or you have to write this part of your thesis, or like you have all these, whatever you're getting to, deadlines or goals or things. But when you get out of school, it kind of is totally up to you. Like whatever kind of show you want to apply to, or whatever kind of audience you want to find, it's very self-directed after that. There's not like an authoritative academic figure kind of being like, these are the requirements for graduate school. Yeah. So the requirements for life found, like I had to let some stuff shift and find just what I wanted to talk about. Like I love talking about tattoos. I love talking about bodies. I love talking about like different kind of people and how we can see, like everyone is like this unique face. And so we can talk about that one person's unique characteristics just from their unique facial features. So I found out like through over time, if I make work about stuff I really want to talk about, when I present my work and present like the showcase of a body of work that's like, I'm serious about this stuff, like the craft and the, the time that goes into it, and the, whatever that kind of brings this, I want to talk about this into the world. And then people are like, oh, you were into tattoos? You're seriously into talking about tattoos? Oh, cool. I want to talk about tattoos too. So I think that was the biggest part of where I kind of stopped trying to fulfill this, like what I needed to do. It's like what I really just wanted to do and what I wanted to talk about. Even though I always kind of wanted to talk about stuff, but I think I got stuck in a lot of like rendering. Like, I don't know if it was like a rendering bubble, but like when you start rendering like that figure that I made in graduate school, I mean, I tried to make it look exactly like me because you're kind of digesting what you're looking at. And so to render, I was always affirmed like, oh, if it looks like it, you did it right. So then, like pat on the back, you're a good artist if you made it right. So I was always kind of caught up in that and making sure that it like looked good for somebody else in a way. I think that there was a lot of that approval where now I'm like, well, like what could it look like? Does it need stripes on its eyeballs? I think so. I think it needs some like weird polka dots over here.
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
kind of how my work has evolved.
Yeah, totally. And I think in that sense, it's become less literal. Like, because I like your use of the word render, because you can kind of render the idea of somebody, and it doesn't necessarily. It's not about the exact physical attributes of a human. It's about like their persona, their personality, their energy too.
Yeah.
I think that's great. And so then, like, you kind of spoke to tattoos. Is that how like lines and polka dots came in, or is there, is that a way that you're speaking to adornment? Or, I mean, I love that the pattern. I mean, that's how I see it. But Just curious what that is for you.
Yeah. Tattooing has always just been magic to me, where I'm like, oh, that's just cool. But that kind of parallels this idea of body structure. And I've dealt a lot with skin issues. And so the idea of bodily structures in skin then being degraded, or whatever that word is, like kind of taken or destructed by a disease that has its own structure. So like chickenpox, I had this crazy case of chickenpox when I was like 4, but the kind of weird placement of where the dots were, it's kind of beautiful. Like it's disgusting, but how they're organized over your body, I don't know, it's just like the serendipitous thing over the form. So tattoos are, and I don't want to call tattoos a disease. Maybe they're like definitely an addiction for sure. But like the way you can kind of break up the structure of the body with a kind of a pattern goes back and forth between conscious adornment or like unconscious or, you know, happening adornment, like scars from accidents or like skin blemishes that like now you have like a weird zit scar and you're like, well, remember that one time I had a zit there? So it's kind of these things that we then get to track our lives. I think a lot about tattooing as, oh, I got that tattoo at that place in time. And so I can help keep track of my identity or keep track of memories.
Yeah.
I have a tattoo of John Waters, and it was like, he kind of brings about this place and time in my life when I was looking at him and looking at his movies and looking about like what art is to other people. And so there's this moment of, okay, now I can keep that moment and his likeness on me. So it goes back to that like unique identification of someone's face. Then it's also a tattoo. So it's kind of this like timekeeper or person keeper on my body, and I never lose it.
I think of them the same. They're like markers in life, you know, it's the same, just like a scar. You go, yeah, that's when I skinned my knee. I was riding my bike as an 8-year-old. This is when I got this tattoo, right when I graduated high school. And yeah, no, that's great. It's fun. Now your two-dimensional work, the paintings, I wanted to make sure we kind of touched on those. To me, it seems like an obvious crossover with the imagery, that it seems like thematically similar. Is there any differences that you wanted to call attention to? I mean, to me, I feel like they're one and the same. Like if this was a physical show, the paintings would be presented with the sculptures very cohesively. Yeah,
there's one that's not done back here that they're they kind of live like they're actually even the same scale. Where I like something that's monumental, because if you make something that's exactly the same size as your head, it's a really weird, just because it's like another human. But if it's bigger, then we can kind of deal with it in like a cartoony way. But so the heads are bigger. The idea of, it goes back to like rendering or sculpting, where the mark becomes this sculptural mark and dealing with that in 2 dimensions. For me, it's like cross training on a road bike or mountain bike, that kind of physical understanding and like dealing with space. And you kind of have to, I don't know, you formulate your body in a different way when you sculpt on a 2-dimensional surface. I don't know if I'd call it sculpting, but, and that kind of, where you're sculpting in clay, you're creating reality. Like I'm making this actual eyelid, or I'm making this thing that then has to live in your space with you. But with a painting, it's like a lie, where you're like, well, I have to draw this line in this weird shape to create what then looks like an eye. So that kind of mind, I want to say an F word in there, but it's like the thing that like really messes with your brain, especially when you're looking at it or making it. It's exciting. Like I like the going back and forth there between what kind of screws with your eyeballs a little bit.
Yeah. And I feel like I should know the answer to this, but I don't. Like, have you like back in college, were you painting and doing clay? Has that always been kind of cross-disciplinary, or have these paintings come in more like recent?
No, I've always been, so another kind of unique path for me is I came to the like pottery really late, where I think I don't want to say late, but like pots weren't ever taught to me being an artistic form. So going to college and seeing people make pots that were artistic, I was like, oh, this is what ceramics means. So I've always been in this realm of just like, how do I spew out what's in my brain, whether it's like a drawing or a painting or sculpture. So I've always done two-dimensional work in a weird way. I had this really amazing life drawing teacher in undergrad, Marianne Bongiorni. I think she's still teaching there. She had this a really cool way of looking at the figure, and that was just another way to help me sculpt. So it was like she broke down the life drawing class in a very academic way, where she's like, you have to turn in this many drawings. They have to be like ankle to foot, neck to head. So I got to break up the body in a kind of dissection, more of like how a doctor would look at an anatomy class.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was just like another way of helping me keep track of the body, I think, in a way.
Yeah.
And it's faster.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Yeah, working out ideas. And that was another silly question I had. Sort of, when you approach the clay, when you approach the three-dimensional work, are you sketching in advance? Are you finding, like, does the personality, does the face, does the head come out through your process, or is there a preconceived kind of goal that you're rendering to or working towards?
Yeah. When I sculpt something like this, it actually it's funny because I've actually been throwing the bases, so they start off as a pot, and then they start, because I've switched from building solid, and that's how I built that figure in graduate school, where it was very academic, building on an armature, where these now have kind of borrowed a lot of vessel-dom in the fact that they're coil built, they're very ceramic-y, they're all ceramic moves. I'm not like, having that second chance to like build up something and then draw with a full bunch of clay. I think these are definitely built, and they speak to me as they're being built. So I definitely don't draw these to start. I always have like weird little sketches. I'm trying to actually look around my office here to see if I have a little sketchbook of, I don't know, I just like keep little ideas, and I'll draw like, oh, I like a head with like a weird like flower shaped wig thing. So I'll kind of break.
You'll know there's something out there, that you're going to discover in that.
Yeah, like Blair Clemo actually he would just draw pots, and they were like tiny, it looked like tattoo flash almost, and he would just draw all these ideas of what different silhouettes could be. And of course that doesn't translate into throwing a pot. He was just trying to work out those ideas faster. So I guess I kind of do that, where I try to see like, oh, what would it be like if I put a clover on her head? Because making that and then kind of editing back through would just be kind of hard to sketch out an idea that way.
Yeah. No, I think there's something to be said about that. Again, like letting the piece speak to you as you go and responding, rather than like an assertion of, I don't know the right word, but power over the object. No, I will make you look like this because this was the idea that I had.
Exactly. I love that about clay, because like as soon as you like poke it, you're like, oh, that's an eyeball.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. I love that about clay, because that's the other thing is like paper. I can render a face. I mean, woohoo! But it's like it never is impressive as when I can just like get in there and make a face. So I actually will leave faces blank in a lot of my drawings, and I'll put like a literal smiley face or like a dot for something, where I'm just not as impressed as what a face does on paper. And I don't really want to spend time rendering a face when I know I'm just going to have more fun doing it in clay if I have that opportunity. If I'm like camping or just have my sketchbook, I'll sit and render, but it's always a little bit more rewarding when I can magically find it in the clay.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned before we got on the call, I thought I would call this out. It's kind of cool that you're, so those most folks that don't live here that wouldn't know this place, but Pratt and Larson is a local tile company, and you're working in the glaze realm. Do you see, is that starting to inform any, because it sounds like you're doing like problem solving development stuff, which is using a different part of your brain, and then maybe the creative part, so to speak, the sciencey part. I don't know. Do you foresee anything coming out of that? Like, is that opening up any channels of going, ooh, I could do that on one of my sculptures, you know?
I think,
Or is that even?
Tile is very flat, but it can be really, I like a lot of the like bas relief happenings that they have at Pratt and Larson that's sculpturally exciting. Glaze I actually also worked at a paint department, like I matched color, and that's just like, you just get to see color. I think it's about that, like, oh, I really like that like turquoise, whatever, next to that like little yellow thing. So I'm just surrounded by color all day long. I definitely have like tile projects that I want to do at my house now, for sure, where I'm like, ooh, I see that. But as far as like
color and surface, it's not informing it. You don't see it informing your work in the short term, at least.
I definitely see it informing my work. I don't know. It's kind of different. Like maybe it's like a slow. Sorry, Gordo. Really having a good time. There's something to be said about like, I don't really know yet what it's kind of saying to my work, where I'll just kind of digest something, where I think about certain projects. I was like, oh, well, that could be used in like, oh, I could use a ram press for this idea, or like, and it just kind of like clicks, where since I'm surrounded by a whole ceramic factory, instead of just sitting in my studio, the kind of the potential has broadened of, oh, well, what if I were to do, because I do a sprig mold for all these little bumpies. Ooh, what could, I think maybe like my ideas become more grandiose a little bit. Like, oh, I could make a weird ram press spriggy moldy thingy. Maybe my tools and my tool just is becoming bigger. I definitely, I don't see myself becoming a tile artist anytime soon. But I definitely, so I made, I guess I would call it a tile mural, the one downtown, the one with the jawbone. I mean, that's kind of, man, if I knew now back then about tile and whatever, like I wish that would a thing. Like I think that there's a lot of things that I could learn. I just don't know where to apply it into my own specific work. Definitely a lot of glaze chemistry that I have. I mean, my apologies for not paying attention to all of my lovely professors out there, but I like, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, oh yeah, that Frit does that, or oh, I could do that in my studio because like I don't want this to craze. But also my sculptural needs, like I don't really care if it crazes sometimes. Maybe it's better that it's like weird and foamy and like does stuff, because I'm not going to eat off of it. I'm not going to use it in my shower. Like, so there's those things where I could see, just my toolbox is getting bigger.
Yeah, just exposure to the techniques even.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's exciting. Well, thank you so much for taking all this time out of your Halloween. And thank you, Gordo.
Isn't in costume yet, but
I know, I was going to ask, is he going to be an Ewok, or what are we leveraging towards there?
Yes, he has maybe a little brown shawl for his Ewok costume.
How good to hear. Well, so yeah, for everyone listening, we've got the online feature of Paige's work, and again, Paige is someone we worked with over the years for quite some time, and want to continue to work with you, Paige. So I'm excited to continue to share new work as you make it, and I look forward to being able to get together with you in person and have a in-person event with you soon,
Yeah.
and do this three-dimensionally in the coming year. Hopefully, coming year. My goodness, I don't know. I'm kind of done trying to like project when things will be normal. I'm just saying this is my normal, and
Yeah.
that's where I'm
Right.
at these days. But
Yeah. The new normal will be
the
interesting.
new, yeah.
For sure.
um, so awesome. I look forward to seeing you soon when it's
Yeah.
appropriate to do so, and be
Yeah.
good and stay safe and chat
Thanks for
soon.
having me.
All right, my pleasure.
Bye.
Cheers.